Okay.
Awesome. Let's see. I don't think, yeah, so I'm just gonna ask you the questions. And then I'm not gonna write anything down. I'll just go back to the recording. So,
Okay.
alrighty. So the first question is, what would be the optimum learning situation for learning?
Oh gosh, I go into a lot of classrooms, and when I go into a classroom, how I can tell if it's an optimal learning environment is it's very interactive. Um, the teacher has really good classroom management, and it's apparent that they do, because even if you have misbehaviors, it's under control.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's a classroom that is differentiated to meet all learning levels. The majority of my career being in special education, I'm very sensitive to see teachers that can really differentiate and pull even those weakest learners up. And kind of on that note, and also not on that note, really intellectually and emotionally safe. I think all kids should just feel the freedom to be who they are and learn the way that they learn, and not feel criticized or bad about that, or bad about who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see, students really presented with an understanding of clear expectations and learning goals. Um, yeah, just, I mean, I have some teachers, and sometimes myself, I've had it where it's posted. Sometimes it's something that's discussed before. It can be, I think really it comes down to if it's that optimal learning environment, they have like very similar components to them, but in just a wide range of modalities. So you're meeting everybody's needs, and really celebrating diversity.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like something you would do at the beginning of the school year, setting your expectations.
Yes, but on a daily basis, I think students should know what their objective is for that day to
Oh,
learn.
gotcha. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's very clear. So it's a little bit of both. I think
Mhm.
that there's you're kind of going over those expectations from the beginning of the year, all throughout the year, but then also, what are we learning today? What do I expect you to know?
Gotcha. Okay. What would the teacher be doing in that situation? So you talked about, setting the expectations, having the goals be just right there. Is there anything else that you would add?
Well, the teacher, what I like to see is a balance between teacher and students. So it's not all teacher, because I think very at the middle school level and on up, you tend to see a lot of teacher-led instruction. And I feel like at the middle school and on up, that's where we see students less engaged. So I think there has to be a fine balance between that. Elementary teachers, I think, are more rock stars at this, but not always. But really modeling, using questions to keep students drawn in, not just lecture based, providing really engaging and fun lessons, which is it's a battle when you have older students to do that, but it can be done. I've seen it done with video shorts that are entertaining, with the teacher just saying silly, funny things. There's lots of ways to make learning more fun, to have it more hands-on. Just so I guess leaning into that would be just really providing engaging, fun lessons. The teacher should be asking a lot of scaffolded questions, bringing it down to where students are more comfortable, and then also challenging them with higher level. A lot of smiling. I hate to go in and see a teacher that looks bored.
Yeah.
A lot of self-directed opportunities, so they're not the only one talking, though, really allowing students to do some of the talking and also have times for working on their own, because there should be a balance. So students have that time to process and engage and learn on their own, as well as all of the instruction that the
Okay,
teacher.
so yeah, so you mentioned that it's not just the teacher doing all the
Yeah, it's
output, but the kids also doing their part. So what would their part be?
yeah, so it's kind of a back and forth. The students should be engaged. You want them actively engaged. I like to see students that are regularly participating. I can tell whether they're raising their hand or giving answers or working together in groups, and they're excited and working together, not just what I want to call singletons, kind of doing their own thing, but they're engaged in that group.
Yeah.
They're excited, they're motivated. These are things we hope that they are. You know, it's a challenge for teachers to always keep that, and that's the teacher's role. They're actively wanting to share their knowledge, and also reflecting on what they've learned, which I think can be teacher-led, is that you're getting students to say what they thought was difficult, what they learned from this lesson. So and then providing them, or students should be willing to take risks and take risks in their work. You know, we don't always expect them to know the answer, but you know, that you would hope that they wouldn't be giving up and that they'll take risks.
Kind of goes back to like that safe space. You know, if
Yeah.
they have that safe space, then they know if they take a risk that there's not gonna be any kind of
Exactly.
You know.
There's no repercussions
Exactly.
from that risk.
Exactly. Okay, what kind of learning materials would students be using?
A wide variety. There's nothing worse than always seeing lessons done in the same format, so much so that students get bored. I think you can have routines in a classroom that are present, that are very similar, that work well for a lot of our kids. I think they work well for older teachers too, those built-in structures and routines, but the materials should always be varied. Sometimes it should be hands-on, sometimes it should be oral, you know, things. Sometimes it should be project-based. Sometimes there should be independent work, not too much. The materials should be colorful, not all computer-based. That's another one that really bugs me, is when you see everything done on the computer now. I see a lot of computer fatigue with students, especially after COVID, having spent so much time on Zoom doing works on computers that they somewhat has become boring, or you see the kids toggling between their screens and trying to play some kind of game while the teacher's expecting something. You walk around and you see that and you're like, ugh. So not all computer-based. There's fine little bits of it where it's great. I think more independent activities can be, I don't know, that's a hard one. But just a variety of materials is the biggest thing. You know, sometimes it should be a book, sometimes it should be a magazine, sometimes it should be some kind of, you know, interactive video or, yeah.
Yeah, I've always appreciated, even as a college student, the multiple ways that you can even achieve one assignment. So, you know, you have an assignment that you have to do this, but they give you 5 different ways to achieve that assignment.
Exactly.
And so the more you can, you know, have that diversity,
it builds in that differentiation that way. And you also then see what your students like, because on the days you do certain types, they'll be like, yes, you know. So and I guarantee you most all students don't say I love independent work. We have a few. Some of our kids on the spectrum like to work very independently and without the group, but not always too. You know, I think if you differentiate your lessons, your teaching strategies, your materials, you're always going to be meeting all of your learners.
Okay. Last question is, what would an ideal assessment look like?
Okay. not one type of assessment. So I think a great teacher is almost always doing some sort of assessment. Sometimes it's just monitoring and seeing what students are producing, and we're real good at seeing things and then taking notes down for our data real quick. Oh, I saw so-and-so is having trouble with this. So that visual watching. I think great assessments often need a written component, but not always. Oral opportunities for tests, because we have some students that aren't good at written components, and that really can show you the difference in those two.
Will was one of those.
Yeah. And I think too, just frequent daily check-ins, whether it's like a exit slip, show what you know, what you learned today. But you should vary that method of tests. Sometimes it could be a paragraph writing. Sometimes it could be an oral presentation. Sometimes it can be just jot down and 1, 2, 3 real quick. I learned this. It's varied. Again, I think that is kind of the crux, or the internal component of all teaching. It's varied, it just can't be boring.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, that was last question. Let me stop the recording.